Hi, everyone, and welcome to Industries Live for this Tuesday, which happens to be July 1st. So, anybody that's joining us from Canada, which would hopefully be on vacation, happy Canada Day to you. I am joining you from Little Canada, Minnesota. So, happy to have everybody that's joining us from around the world. We love to hear where people are joining us from. So, please drop that into the chat. We'll be calling people out from wherever we see that you drop in. So that'll be some of the interaction throughout today's episode. I am Dr. Karen Hildebrand. I lead our partner solutions architects, so our technical side of the house, across a number of industries at AWS, including financial services, healthcare and life sciences, telecommunications, and what we're talking about today, which is media, entertainment, games, and sports. And I'm joined by my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, will you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Karen. I'm Aaron Pulkka, and I'm coming to you live from Southern California, and I lead the global partner strategy for games at AWS and immersive experiences within media, entertainment, games, and sports. And really excited today to be talking about player acquisition, engagement, monetization specifically. We think about the build, run, grow framework within AWS for games, and after the game is built, we need to make sure that we get the right players into the game and keep them engaged and create a great experience for them. I've been in the games industry for about 30 years, worked at a lot of different companies, large and small, and it's always an interesting challenge. Look forward to diving into it today with our partner.
Amazing. And I have to say, my two favorite answers that I have seen ever come in here in terms of location. I love this. We have Algeria and then north of US East 2. That is an AWS fan right there. I love it. All right, keep dropping in where you're joining us from, and let's welcome on our guest, Modulate.
Hi, Karen. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Hank.
Hey, Hank. Would you mind kicking us off with a introduction of yourself and maybe a little fun fact as you're coming on today?
Sure. First, happy Canada Day, Karen, to you
Thank you.
and all the fine Canadian folks out there.
Appreciate it.
So my name is Hank Howie. I'm Modulate's game industry evangelist. Like Aaron, I've been in the game industry for decades now. And I was a founding member of Blue Fang Games. We made Zoo Tycoon back in the day. I got introduced to Modulate's founders, Carter Huffman and Mike Pappas, back in 2019. They were doing some interesting work around voices and in games. And we really felt like games was a good place to start with that, with people changing their avatars and such. So we started to do that, and then we all know what happened in 2020 with the pandemic. And Carter at the time said, well, in addition to these voice things we can do, the technology can also listen to all the voice chat going on in a game and, figure out when there's, non-appropriate stuff being said. And I said, really? That's very good, Carter. We could probably do something with that. I said, is there anything else? And he said, yeah, we can probably do it 2 orders of magnitude cheaper than anybody else in the world can do it. I said, now I think we have something. So that pretty much gets us to where we are today.
Awesome.
That's every founder's dream, is thinking about,
Yeah,
hey, I
I
think
know.
we have
It's
something.
like, yeah,
And
right.
we
Here's
can
another thing we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Especially when you're like, I can change the cost dynamic of this. Like, I think that's a
right.
huge thing to be able to say as a differentiator. So, can you tell us a little bit about like when you're thinking about voice moderation? I know when we were prepping, I was talking about, okay, I've heard my kids play video games. I know what that like banter sounds like. What does toxicity look like? What if I'm a game studio? I mean, I know it from a personal perspective, but what does that look like more broadly?
Yeah, it can take many forms. I think what we really try to think about is trying to mitigate and limit harms, actual harms that are going on.
I like that you brought that up, and I never thought that I was going to be able to say that that's a similarity between financial services and gaming, but it's very much the same as a credit card. If you get a false decline, you're actually a good actor, but you get declined, or in this case, you get flagged and voice banned for a period of time, even if you get a mute for a short period of time, that can put the credit card in the back of your wallet, or it can be putting this game at the bottom of what you're going to select to play as well. So super careful boundary that you're having to think about when you're designing this system. So I appreciate that you brought that up. I think that's really key when you're thinking about both what is the thing that you're trying to make sure you take away. So how do you control that toxicity, but also making sure that you're recognizing that banter between players. So I really appreciate your bringing that up.
Yeah, again, very, very important to us to keep the, and as we often say, we're really good at picking out, needles out of giant haystacks. So voice chat can be huge, right? Some of the biggest games in the world can have 100 million, 120, 150 million hours of voice chat in a month. And, imagine trying to be able to sift through all that. Again, but we can do that in real time and identify the bad stuff pretty readily. It's funny when we deploy in a client, and it happens 99.9% of the time. We deploy in a client, and that's the first time they can actually see into their voice chat in the game and see actually what's being said. And invariably what they say is, we knew it was bad. We didn't think it was this bad.
And Aaron, like we've talked about this internally a number of times, so I'm going to put you a bit on the spot here, but what does that look like when you're talking to game studios? What are they asking you about? And is it always English that they're talking about? How do you sort through that?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and it's not always English. It's every language that people can speak. People are playing games all around the world and playing games together across languages, and it is virtual worlds or real worlds. And so people often will try to dismiss this issue as saying it's just a game, but they're real people on the other side of these screens. And people are really, our customers, game studios, are really worried about losing those players, as Hank said, but also worried about having a bad experience. People want create experiences that are enjoyable, and maybe there's some banter and maybe there's some excited utterances when things go wrong, but it's more about creating an overall positive experience for people to keep coming back and to have fun, which is why we make games in the first place. And knowing that sometimes if a game launches and there's an influx of toxicity in the community, and to Hank's point that they're more likely to leave, that can actually lead to a game failing out of the gate and finding it very difficult to gain that audience back. So more and more customers are coming to us and saying we need to address this sooner rather than later, so that we don't try to patch it, but let's get ahead of this. But it isn't easy to know where to start. So how do we advise customers, and why can't they just do this themselves? And what do they need help with?
Yeah, it's getting back to what I said at the outset. You can, there's ways to do this with off the shelf, stuff. You can, but the real challenge is voice data is just so very large, and it can be really expensive to try. And in fact, that's the reason that, and I'm sure Aaron, you know this from your days playing games. That's the reason why a lot of players playing online games, sometimes they'll just turn their headsets off, right? Because there wasn't anything that game companies could really do about it because of that expense. Once we came on the scene, starting in 20 and 21, now there was a way to actually, oh, you really, you can do it. It's a funny story. As I mentioned, Carter Huffman is one of Modulate's co-founders. Both he and Mike are MIT graduates, so and there's that. Carter was at NASA for about 6 years, and his role, one of his roles, was to program satellites in space and to take pictures and asteroids and things like that. And some of those satellites have been up there for decades as well. So they have the memory and processing power of a big calculator. So to try to program that into, he basically learned to put a lot of capability into really small spaces. And so that's what we're able to do. So we have just this tiny bot, if you will, that sits on the network or on the client. And it basically can listen really quickly and discern if there's something here that requires, a greater level of looking at, more detail. And that's one of the real keys to our capability, is our ability to do that. And also to throw out, as we know, players playing, they're not talking all the time. A lot of times there's silence, even when teams are playing and trying to, you'll get most silence. If you just grab all the voice data and just try to drag it down and then try to process it and filter it, you're still going to have to catch all that silence. We throw that out just as a matter of course, so that gets rid of a lot of cost, right off the bat. And I think it's that cost component that enabled things to go on for so long. And then one of the big issues here is, and Karen, this will hit home for you, is kids learn things really fast, right? When they're exposed to something and they see something going on and it becomes normalized, then they're much more likely to just, oh, well, if everyone else is doing it, I can do it, right? And it's kind of neat and fun if you can say things that you can't really say, in a face-to-face social environment. And unfortunately, some people do that stuff online. And so really getting that cost component under control now enables us to do this. And I think one of the big benefits is that kids can learn to play more appropriately with their fellow players.
I think that is a super positive outcome. And I think that I think you did a really good job of describing like what makes Modulate different, and being able to say, like, we can take what we know from other industries. And I was excited to hear actually the call out to satellite. We have an aerospace satellite and space division within AWS as an industry. So super cool to hear that connection. And I'm a ground station ambassador for anybody that has questions about AWS ground station. But super helpful to say, like, by changing the cost dynamic, you have a completely different way of looking
Right.
at doing something that wasn't possible before. And I think that's the key that we want to always share with our audiences. If you ran into this problem and you thought, oh, like this was a showstopper, I can't possibly do this, it may not have been possible before, but that doesn't mean it's not possible now. And I think that's the power of using our partners as well, is you don't have to go through that learning curve. You're able to accelerate being able to solve a problem. And that's part of why we do Industries Live, is to make sure that people are aware of what are the potential partners and solutions that exist in the market, so that they don't have to build it themselves. And that something that was super frustrating or could have even bankrupted a game previously, now is completely solvable. And certainly from a parent's perspective, I love the fact that, yes, my kids want to play all these games, and I'd feel better if I know that there's some level of moderation, while also not being like it's so moderated that they won't want to play it anymore. So I love that balance that you've been talking about. I also want to shout out Angela. Nice job joining us from New Hampshire, and a nice little tie-in from coming home from Quebec. So love the fact that we got both of those in there. That's a nice little balance as well. So I'm super curious. I always ask this question. Sorry, Hank, I'm going to come back to you with what's one of your favorite customer stories that you're actually able to share with us? Because I know that not everything's shareable. That's just the world of being able to talk about it publicly. But what was one of your favorite things to work on?
No, we can and do talk about this quite a bit, because obviously it's a big feather in our cap. But we run in Call of Duty today, one of the biggest and most played and well-known games, multiplayer. Certainly games out there. When we first started talking to them, it was we really they were great in the sense that they said, if your stuff really works, all right, let's see. So basically, we did an A/B test. The entire U.S. population of players playing Call of Duty. Half of them we moderated in ToxMod, half we didn't. In the group that we moderated, one of our favorite stats is the day 21 retention was 28% higher in the group that was getting moderated, which goes to and again, and the folks at Activision were also real terrific in saying, that is that's a really important stat. Player acquisition is just as it is with anything, right? All companies, customers, TV, acquiring players is extremely expensive, and to see them walk out the door, within 21 days of getting started is well, it's not good for business, right? And so what is good for business is keeping more of those players in the game, and by, again, as I said before, by reducing their chances of running into toxic players and toxicity, it does just that, and I think too, it's interesting to note that most folks, if you who are playing in games, if you just tap them lightly and say, that wasn't appropriate, can you please, it's against our code of conduct, whatever, can you please not do that again? 70% of players never do it again.
Nice.
I mean, yeah, people really do want to. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, all right, I get it. All right, we're good. And they keep going. The number of players who are really, just trolls, bad actors, it's in almost any game, it's low single digits of players. It's those players. Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just going to say that raises an interesting question about the granularity of data and connection you have with the game studios that are operating these games. When you get that signal that something has been said inappropriate, what kind of data are you able to share with the studio, and and what kind of decisions can they make with that?
Yeah, we can flag anything anywhere between 20 and 40 seconds, and then once that's flagged, it can immediately go up in our console and be available to the community managers in the game. Very often, and again, when you're talking about the scale that some of our game clients are operating at, what's really key there too is to be able to automate some of that. So that's generally getting us up and running in a game, getting Toxmod up and running in a game is usually, we can accomplish that in a matter of hours, believe it or not. What really takes a little bit more time, but again, more on the order of days or a week or so, is having the customer tune Toxmod to be able to have it flag things appropriately, and then we assign certain grades of toxicity, and for them to understand, oh, and this is, they all do this. They quickly get to an understanding that, oh, okay, any toxic behavior that's getting this kind of score from Toxmod, we 100% don't want that. Like that's no go, not acceptable. So basically, they can just set Toxmod to say any behavior that scores right here, and, just automatically flag the player. And again, we usually recommend, but it's totally up to the customer. Again, the important thing is Toxmod isn't just this automaton that gets dropped onto a game and operates as it sees fit. Toxmod is tuned by the customer, so the customer can really have it operate the way they want, and basically get things. And so once they get that going and it's automated, we operate at a 98, 99% accuracy level within a game. Once they get that tuned, anything that's really bad, it just gets automatically flagged. Oh, I was going to say, we generally recommend to customers that they basically do a 3 strikes policy. Warn somebody, warn them, just tell them, hey, that was no good. And usually that's enough, as I said earlier. After that second time, all right, maybe you mute them for a while. And then the third time, you want to maybe start thinking about, is this player really worth having around?
And in addition to the frequency of those triggers, the context is really important. As we talked about, like the excited utterance of oh, a bad thing just happened to me, is very different than targeted insults and attacks.
That's right.
So is that something you're able to distinguish between?
Oh yeah, and even right off the bat, the tuning helps a lot. Like out of the box, we're in the mid-90s. The tuning really helps. A lot of times what we say, and so the difference is, between heck yeah, great, and heck you, right? Not so great. But usually they're saying worse things than heck.
Right. Fair.
Very fair. So what I heard out of that was you can get started in hours. You could do A/B testing so that you have a chance to understand, like, what is the impact of this overall to my game, so that you can quantify that over time if you want. And then there's a human in the loop to be able to do that final model tuning, make sure it fits with the culture of the game and what you're trying to do.
Yep.
And then ultimately, you're looking at what is that long-term retention rate? What are the overall ways you can think about that from a monetization standpoint, and making sure that you're reducing customer churn rates. Did I capture that?
I couldn't have said it better myself, Karen.
Okay, that is amazing. I love it. So I want to make sure that we recap, give everybody a chance to actually end the session with what is the 60 seconds that you want people that have joined us today to remember, and those that didn't join us today, that we're going to be able to say, come back and watch this video because this is what matters the most.
Yeah, I would just say, if you're running a game with voice chat, or if you're thinking about enabling voice chat in your game, it's definitely worth doing. You can now do it, and do it safely. And by doing it, you're going to make your game stickier, and also you're going to increase your retention and your revenue.
Awesome.
I like that.
Yeah.
Aaron, I'm going to throw it to you. You're the expert here. What do you want everybody to remember that has joined us today? Quick recap, and what do you want people to watch this video for once it goes up on YouTube afterwards?
Well, games are a big part of our lives, and it's really important that we have good experiences in them, and that we create good experiences for our players. And so toxicity can not only have a negative impact on user retention and monetization, it can have a negative impact on people's lives. And we're here to entertain and bring people together in fun ways. In voice chat can make a more engaging community and give people connections across different geographies and allow people to play together, which is a really powerful, wonderful thing. And moderation can help bring that into a positive experience, and it can be done quickly and in a way that is tuned and not just a band hammer to knock everybody to the curb that says something that maybe they shouldn't have.
Wow, that's two. You as well, Aaron. Thank you.
That was fantastic. I absolutely love that. So thank you everybody who has joined us today. We absolutely enjoy all the interaction in the chat. If you have questions, reach out to any of our guests or Aaron or I. You can find us all on LinkedIn. We're happy to answer any questions after the session today. And please make sure you put on your calendars every other Tuesday. Industries Live is live, and we alternate between financial services and media, entertainment, games, and sports. So the next session will be financial services focused, but make sure that every 2 weeks you're putting that on your calendar. We love having you here. And please go and click on that QR code. Yeah, nice, Aaron. I love it. That was very Vanna White, and I totally referenced
good,
that. I love this group. So click on that QR code, give us some feedback. We always want to improve, and appreciate your joining us here today on Industries Live. Thanks again, Hank, for joining us, and Modulate as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.